Hey, welcome to another episode of the Hardy Wrestling Podcast with your girl Stephanie Hardy. This is going to be a two-part episode, so I'm going to release part two a little bit later. But in this part one, I got your news and gossip-ish, and I have a special interview with my friend and fellow wrestling podcaster Miranda Morales. It's a special conversation that I'm really glad that we were able to have on my platform. So please, enjoy that interview and enjoy this part one of Knockout Queens. Part two, like I said, will be released on either today or tomorrow, Sunday morning. So please listen to both episodes and enjoy the vibes. Okay, so I got your news and gossip-ish here, and we're going to start with the rumor that Charlotte Flair is supposed to be rumored to be tied to her fiancé Andrade upon their return to WWE programming. As you may or may not know, Charlotte Flair has been sort of on a hiatus and on a break, and so has Andrade. I don't know exactly what they're doing, but I think she had a surgery, but then she decided to sort of, just chill out for the rest of the year. But basically there was a rumor via WrestleVotes.com that said that there had been an idea discussed on having an on-screen pairing of Charlotte Flair and Andrade when they return to television. And the idea behind it is to use Charlotte's star power to elevate Andrade into the main event scene. Now, mind you, I feel like this would be a really cool idea, considering the fact that Andrade really has never really been on his own on the main roster. He always had someone to be on the main roster with him in the form of Thea Trinidad, who was formerly known as Zelina Vega. She was his mouthpiece, and that was a really strong pairing there. But since Zelina Vega has now been released by WWE and she's no longer working for them, that leaves Andrade sort of, on his own like he was when he came to NXT. And that's going to be really different because he sort of struggled a little bit with his on-screen persona there until he got paired with Zelina Vega as his manager. So if he got paired with Charlotte Flair and if she sort of served as his manager and also as a wrestler, that I feel like would be a match made in heaven because they're both strong competitors in the ring. She would definitely serve as a great mouthpiece for him in that sense. And I feel like they would both they're both sort of like an iron sharpens iron kind of couple. So I feel like, and since considering we know that they're together, they've been out publicly, they've taken pictures publicly and all of the above, I feel like it would be a good idea if they did sort of put them together as a collective thing, whether she's a manager for him or maybe he's a manager for her, I don't know. But I feel like it would still be a good idea considering Andrade is stronger when he has someone to inspire him to, bring that fire. And who better to bring that fire than his soulmate, right? So I think that would be really interesting to see. But it hasn't been confirmed, so we're sort of at a wait and see period. Also in the news, we have Goldberg supposedly challenging Roman Reigns on WWE's The Bump this past Wednesday. So he had an interview on WWE's The Bump, which sort of serves as sort of like their morning show, kind of like on ESPN with Get Up and First Take, except theirs is streamed online. So he stated on The Bump that Roman Reigns was next, which basically gave the sense that, maybe he would want to fight him for the Universal title, coming up, maybe towards Royal Rumble time or maybe WrestleMania time. And I know a lot of fans were sort of pushing the idea of Roman Reigns facing The Rock around WrestleMania time, to sort of prove who would be, say, for instance, like the real tribal chief of the family and stuff like that. And that would be really amazing. But a lot of people on social media really weren't, enthusiastic about Goldberg, being the next opponent for Roman Reigns in a bigger stage like that. Because they feel like he really doesn't have a place in wrestling anymore. And judging by his performances as of late, they feel like he really just needs to just stop wrestling altogether. And he's not really as popular because of the idea that he was the reason why Bret Hart had to retire from wrestling relatively quickly because he was inexperienced, in the ring, at that time. So it's just, it's a lot of animosity towards him returning. But to me, I know, and I also saw a whole lot of stuff on social media sort of like comparing, saying if you're excited about Sting, then you should keep the same energy about Goldberg. And honestly, I can say for myself, I was excited but slightly cautionary about Sting's return simply because he had been injured before. But I am excited for his return to wrestling simply because of the fact that I thought he was finished. But honestly, I can say when it comes to Goldberg, I'm a little bit bummed about it myself because the last time he came back, he beat a really strong Bray Wyatt, in his Fiend character for the Universal title for whatever reason. And it just feel like it, even though the Fiend is still as strong as ever as a character without a title, it felt like at that time that he sort of stole some momentum that Bray Wyatt could have had as a champion. And maybe that makes me a person that doesn't keep that same energy or whatever. But at the same time, I have to be truthful to myself. And I'm not exactly as excited about Goldberg being back, in the fold of wrestling now. And I know why WWE does it. They do it for, to bring in casual fans who did remember Goldberg, from the 90s and stuff like that, which is a good business move. But to someone like me, it's like I feel like that spot could be served for someone a lot better who's there all the time. Like someone like like maybe a Big E who's been on the singles run, for a while, or someone like, I don't know, just anybody else to have a chance at a Universal title outside of someone who's never truly there. So, y'all can blame me, and crucify me if you want, but that's just how I really feel about it. So, also in the news, we have Snoop Dogg appearing on AEW pretty soon. It was announced that this past Wednesday that he will be making an appearance on the special New Year's Smash episode of Dynamite on January the 6th, 2021, which is coming up. Now, there was a rumor that he might be doing commentary, given his last performance as a commentator for that boxing match that just happened between Nate Robinson and Jake Ryan, I think that's his name. But yeah, basically, his role as a commentator along with Mauro Ranallo, who I miss very much, was very lauded and talked about, in such a funny way on social media. So it's not necessarily proven that he's going to be a commentator on AEW, but there was a rumor that WWE really didn't like it that much because Snoop Dogg has always exclusively sort of worked with WWE, for the past couple of years, and seeing the fact that Sasha Banks, the SmackDown Women's Champion, is his cousin as well, he's always been tied to them, and he's a Hall of Famer in WWE as well. So there was this rumor that maybe WWE removed his Undertaker Snoop Dogg merchandise because it was announced that he was going to be on AEW. But actually, as it turns out, that rumor was debunked by PW Insider, stating that the reason why they took down the Undertaker Snoop Dogg merch was because it was only a limited edition that was supposed to be up until December the 6th. So they took it down because of that, because it was only supposed to be up for a limited time only. So I don't know if they're really beefing with Snoop Dogg, but I almost feel like they really can't, beef with Snoop Dogg in that sense, because they have to understand that Snoop Dogg is not just exclusively their person. He's not under contract with the WWE. He just works with them simply because, he's a legend and he has ties to the business through his cousin, and because he's just, he's always been a wrestling fan. And they have a good relationship. But he's not just tied with them, with a contract. He's a very marketable, legendary rapper. And you see him have his hands in so many different things and so many different sports, as you can see with boxing, with basketball, because he's an LA Lakers fan, and because he's from there. And you can't, and with him, with his show with Martha Stewart and his endorsements with Tostitos. Like, he is a really marketable rapper at this point, so you can't just expect him to just stay in one place. And if being on AEW is going to continue his, marketable reign out here in these streets, then they should just let him do that. But, I hope WWE really isn't that petty enough to be angry at him for doing that. But, I just hope they kind of just let that go and just let him do him, because Snoop Dogg is going to always do him. He's always done that, and he always will do that. So leave the DOGG alone. Anyway, and into some sad news. A professional wrestler who passed, there was an actor and a professional wrestler who passed away on Thursday. His name was Tommy Tiny Lister. He was famously known for playing Debo in the Friday movies with Ice Cube and Chris Tucker. And he passed away on Thursday, and law enforcement was called to the scene of his home in Marina Del Rey, California, just before 3 p.m. After there was a call regarding an unconscious male. His manager, Cindy Cowan, revealed that he had displayed symptoms of COVID-19 in recent days and that he was working on a film but had to cancel shooting as a result of feeling ill. And he was pronounced dead at the scene. So they have yet to, the coroner has yet to reveal a cause of death for him. But we wish his family and his manager and, of course, his friends, thoughts and prayers, and good vibes sent to them, definitely. He has ties to wrestling, like I mentioned before, because he was featured in the 1989 wrestling film No Holds Barred that WWE financed to feature Hulk Hogan in the film, and he starred as Zeus. So following the film, he took the gimmick into the WWE, which was a WWF at the time, and he was Zeus, the human wrecking machine. And as a part of a storyline, he wanted to defeat Hulk Hogan in the ring since Hogan's character came out victorious in the movie. And then he also ended up forming a tag team with Macho Man Randy Savage, and they faced off with Hogan and Brutus the Barber Beefcake at SummerSlam in 1989. And Hogan and Beefcake wound up winning, with Hogan pinning Zeus to win the match for his team. And Mr. Lister had appeared on WCW as Z Gangster. And he also appeared in several high-profile movies, including The Dark Knight, The Fifth Element, and Zootopia. And as I also mentioned on my Facebook, if you follow me there, that the first time I actually ever saw him in a movie was One Night with the King, which was a biblical movie about Queen Esther. And he played a eunuch to the king. And I thought that was really interesting because that was the first movie I actually ever saw him in, and not a Friday movie, because I saw Friday my freshman year in college. So that, which is also something that a lot of people try to, rib me about, but hey, it's whatever. That's just how I saw the movie. And Ice Cube, the person who created the Friday movie franchise, tweeted and said, "Rest in peace, Tiny Debo Lister, America's favorite bully, was a born entertainer who would pop into character at the drop of a hat, terrifying people on and off camera, followed by a big smile and a laugh. Thank you for being a good dude at heart. I miss you already." So we wish him a great transition, and I hope that wherever he went, it was a peaceful, journey towards there, and I hope that he continues to spread love and light with his spirit. And to end the news and gossipish segment, we have Vince McMahon being rumored to throw a fit about Keith Lee and Otis's abilities in the ring as big men. This was something that sort of caused a real uproar on social media, in the sense that people were saying that Vince McMahon reportedly threw a fit, in regards to the work of big men on the main roster. And they name dropped Keith Lee and Otis as the main two. And it was reported that they were mandated to undergo 2 training classes per week at the Performance Center, taught by Drew Gulak and Adam Pearce. Now, they also stated that it was Dabba-Kato who was put into it, also Retribution member Mace, and almost AJ Styles' 7-foot bodyguard. And this was kind of interesting, seeing as Keith Lee has been featured on television multiple times, on the main roster, and he's been able to sort of, get some clean wins in terms of him beating Randy Orton at Payback this year, and his success on the main roster with that feud. But then at the same time, he also hasn't been able to lose really clean because there's been lots of DQs, but that's not any fault of him, but mostly of the fault of the booking. And you could argue that it was made to continue to help him look strong because he hasn't really taken like a full-on loss like that. But at the same time, there's still some speculation that they might not be completely sold on him, because even on the WWE 24, when you saw Vince McMahon talking to Keith Lee, he was telling him, like, you have to make me believe it. And even though that's true, a part of me just can't figure out what is it about Keith Lee that can't make you believe in him. This is a man who can move like a cruiserweight even though he looks like a heavyweight. Like, he can hit a spirit bomb like that feels powerful and looks like it would shake an entire room and not just the ring. So for the life of me, I don't understand what is it that's so hot and cold, you know, about somebody like a Keith Lee. You have a bona fide star there. Why are you trying so hard to micromanage him? Leave him alone. And then I'm also wondering what could be wrong with Otis, because he's done absolutely nothing but great character work throughout this entire year, with him and Mandy, him possibly getting stabbed in the back by his former partner Tucker, him and the Miz going back and forth over the Money in the Bank, you know, case. And like, I just don't understand what is it about them that was so wrong if this is true. But to me, I figured the way that maybe this will be all proven wrong is if they're still on television on the main roster. Because there were a lot of people who saw it as a demotion, but it's never wrong to go back and improve on some things and tweak some things in order to get better. But I don't necessarily see it as a demotion, but at the same time, I do wonder what is it about them that was so wrong, because I just didn't see what was wrong. But then again, I'm only a fan and not really, you know, a wrestling guru like say Vince McMahon is, or somebody who's in the business, who's been running this business for like umpteen years. So yeah, I just hope they're able to pull it all together and continue to succeed on the main roster. So that's all that's going on in the world of professional wrestling and news and gossip-ish. And now we're going to go to my conversation with the incredibly beautiful and amazingly talented Miranda Morales. Okay, so I was sitting with my friends one day and they asked me, Stephanie, how do you record your podcast? And I said, with the Anchor app on my phone. And they were like, are you serious? I'm like, yeah, it's that simple. It is absolutely free. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone and your computer. And it will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and many more. You can also make money from the podcast with no minimum listenership. And it's got everything you need to make a podcast in one place. They even have classes and stuff that you can listen to that will give you all kinds of good tips on what you need to do in order to make the best podcast. So if you want to do this, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. That's anchor.fm, or download the free Anchor app to get started. Hello?
Hello.
Hey, Miranda.
Hi, Stephanie. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Just, enjoying the day and just trying to get a few things done. But I'm really excited to talk with you. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Oh my gosh, thank you for coming on my show. Like, this is so great. I'm so excited to talk to you, on this platform in this way. So I'm just gonna start by asking you what I ask all of my guests, and that's, when did you fall in love with wrestling?
Oh, I fell in love with wrestling when I was probably about 10 years old. I was in elementary school. I remember it being after school, and I was kind of, going through the channels, and all of a sudden I just ended up on an episode of WCW Nitro. And I just remember the grandeur of it all, with the big crowds and the wrestlers coming down the ramp and the action happening in the ring. And I just remember just being so entranced by it all. Like, it was just so fascinating to see all of that come together in such a big spectacle. And then not too long after that, I found Monday Night Raw, and just the fact that there was two shows on the same night that had the same content, but it being kind of different, too, like made me fall in love with it, because I was flipping back and forth between channels because I just couldn't get enough of both products were giving me. And I just knew from that point on, like, this was going to be something I would watch for a long time.
You know, it's funny that you mentioned the whole flipping back and forth thing, because it's almost kind of full circle now, because now it's like, now more than ever, I'm pretty sure that's happening with a lot of wrestling fans. They're flipping back and forth between WWE and AEW, and it's just it's almost like a repeat of what happened in the past, except it's on a different night, you know, with NXT and AEW. And then also it reminds me of my dad and how he used to have to tape Monday Night Raw and Nitro, because he'd have to work on some Mondays. So he would literally like tape them. He had like a whole stack of videotapes at our house. That's full of episodes. And I didn't understand what was happening at the time because I was a child. So I was just kind of like, why are you flipping this back and forth? You know, I didn't understand the concept of the war until I got much older, and I was like, oh, now I get it.
And you make a good point. It looks very different now, though. Like, you know, kids now, or teenagers, or just anyone, the wars look different because of, you know, modern technology too, where people can DVR it or watch it later. And so there's a lot more flexibility, where in the 90s, it did feel like a do or die. Like, if I miss this, I will not see it again. Or, you know, and even then the internet wasn't as big on wrestling news and speculation too. So even then you didn't really have an additional source of news to be like, what happened, other than like your friends, or, you know, like what happened. So it felt, and maybe just looking back on it as a kid, it felt like more suspenseful, like more, I have to do this, I have to watch both, I have to know what's going on. And now, you know, anything a bit from spoilers, or, you know, you record one and watch the other, whatnot. But I do see myself doing that on Wednesdays, absolutely, just during both shows, going back and forth and just kind of peeking in what the other one is doing, because I'm always wanting to know like what's happening in that moment, and who's capturing my attention right at that second.
Yeah, it's really interesting how that's happening now, and just how it sort of ties in with the past. And it's just, everything has a tendency to come back up, you know, like nothing is truly ever that new under the sun. So I want to ask you, what exactly made you want to pursue using your voice in wrestling in the various ways in which you use it?
Yes. That, I think it's a little bit of what I've always done as far as communications and public speaking. I've always done that in some capacity. I got my bachelor's in communications, and I didn't know what I wanted to do with it. I just knew that I've always felt comfortable speaking in front of people, whether it's in presentations or interviews or speeches. And I've always been drawn more to the commentary announcing side of wrestling. When I first started to watch wrestling, I was always more enthralled with the storytelling aspect of it. And I felt like the commentators and announcers and interviewers played such a big role in that. So, for example, in WCW, having, you know, Bobby the Brain Heenan and Tony Schiavone and Mike Tenay, that trio was like, you know, the very first commentary team I ever listened to. But then on Raw with JR and the King, that dynamic, and especially the way JR called matches, really felt to me like that was the strong connection I had with wrestling. And so I always liked that aspect. I always, you know, was comfortable in, you know, speaking in public, but it didn't really come together until a few years ago when I was living in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and the local wrestling promotion over there, Destiny Wrestling, was looking for people in different roles and different capacities. And for me, it was kind of like a dream come true to do something I've always seen on TV, but actually be that person. So I kind of jumped ahead and said, hey, how would you know, how can I help? What can I do? And so when I told them a little bit about my background and how I got into wrestling, they said, all right, do you want to start with backstage interviewing? So that was my very first role was a backstage interviewer with Destiny Wrestling. And it was just something I literally got thrown into. Like one night I showed up and they said, okay, here are your interviews. And I loved it so much because it was so fun to interact with the wrestlers. And again, I felt like I was able to help tell part of a story. And that, to me, actually being a part of it was fascinating and amazing. A few months after that, my role evolved into ring announcing, and I started to announce some of the matches during the shows. And I was really fortunate where I had a little bit more of an ease with that. Adam Merrick, who was the commissioner and ring announcer for Destiny Wrestling, was a huge help for me and helped guide me through that process, but also just studying and looking at different announcers and kind of just recollecting a bit too of my memory as a kid, you know, who I wanted to study. And anywhere from Howard Finkel to Lillian Garcia to Justin Roberts to Melissa Santos. Those were all people that at one point in time has kind of influenced my announcing style. And then a few years ago, it evolved into podcasting. I met my good friend Greg DeMarco, who runs thechairshot.com. He invited me to be on one of his podcasts, and I just never left. And that's another thing I do. You just invite me somewhere, and I just never leave. And that's how I think I stuck around with wrestling and podcasting. And it's evolved to work with other websites like Big Gold Belt Media and Lucha Central. And so it really has been an evolution. I have to say, if anything, I think in a lot of things in life, you start in one place and you just evolve and grow into different roles and opportunities.
Okay, that's really interesting. So you basically started with backstage interviewing first, which transitioned into ring announcing, and then you did podcasting in that order.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so you did mention how the first promotion you connected with was Destiny Wrestling. You said in New Mexico?
Yes.
Okay, so would you mind telling me or telling us a little bit more about them and how they welcomed you into the fold?
Yeah, I think you'll appreciate this. So I went to one of their shows earlier before I actually got to know the promotion itself, and it was the first independent wrestling show I'd ever been to. I had only gone to WWE house shows and I've been to Raws and SmackDowns, but I'd never been to an independent wrestling show. So for me, it was really exciting because I felt way more connected to what was happening because it's a much smaller environment. Now, you really don't know who's in the ring. It takes time to get used to it, but at the same time, just like in wrestling, whether you're watching it on TV or in the independent scene, there's people you automatically connect with one way or another, whether it's their look, their attitude, their music. And so with Destiny Wrestling, everything about it clicked for me. You know, the characters, the wrestlers, the matches, they are a little bit more hardcore in some of their matches. So that to me, again, as a 90s kid, like I was totally interested in that. But I actually got to meet the promoters and some of the wrestlers at a Comic-Con that they had a booth there, and they were there promoting the promotion, and they were having a show coming up soon. And at that time, they were also, promoting some opportunities they had. So when I saw their booth, I was like, I got to go up to them. I got to let them know, I'm a fan. So I did. And we started to talk, and they mentioned, hey, we're looking for some people who want to work with our organization. If you're interested, shoot us an email. So I just knew at that moment I had to, sometimes in life, kind of things happen by coincidence or just timing. And for me, it was one thing to go to their show and watch it, but to literally just, be told like, hey, you should work with us. It was like, well, what do I got to lose? I had no idea what I was getting into, and I had no idea what it was going to lead to. But for me, being able to actually be at a show and then get to meet the people behind the scenes a bit made me feel so comfortable. And that is my home promotion. A lot of people talk about what they consider home, and Destiny Wrestling will always be my home, always be my first love, because it was truly a magical time where they had such a great environment and great people. There was people who were willing to help me learn and get me involved. And I think in general, that's any place that you work, that kind of environment always makes you want to work harder and do better. And that place always felt so encouraging and inviting, but also a place that made me want to push harder and do more because of seeing everybody go out there and kill it every show. And so I will always look at Destiny Wrestling Organization as my first love, my home. Unfortunately, they're no longer active. They stopped running shows almost about 2 years ago. They were active for almost 11 years, I think, in Albuquerque and in the New Mexico area. And it's definitely left a big hole. The wrestling fans in New Mexico are like no other. They are so amazing and open and funny and caring. And again, I think I got spoiled there. Though fans, wrestling fans everywhere are amazing. I've had nothing but great interactions. Again, there's always something romantic about your first, the first show you announce, the first promotion you work with. I had a lot of my first with Destiny Wrestling Organization, including, some of my first fan interactions, and it will always have a really special place in my heart for the rest of my life. I wouldn't be here today. I don't think I'd even would have thought about working for other promotions if I hadn't had such a positive experience with Destiny Wrestling.
Well, that's a beautiful way to remember them, of course. You always, like you said, you never forget the first experience you have with wrestling. And I'm really glad that they were able to, foster a sense of education for you and help you learn and grow into who you are now. I hate that they don't exist anymore. Wow.
I know. Yeah. New Mexico's very tricky. With wrestling, it is a licensed sport there, and it's involved with the state commission. And I don't know if you live in a state that requires licensing and stuff, but it's tricky and it's expensive. And so it's been a disappointing aspect about New Mexico, especially because for being in the West Coast, it's one of the smaller populated states that, whenever you have something really successful and good that thrives there, it benefits not just, your community, but it benefits businesses. I think it's so hard sometimes for people to look at independent wrestling as a business, but it does foster so many positive things in the community. And it was sad that the state just handles it in a different way. But yeah, and it happens, wrestling promotions, they come and they go, but that one is and always will be very special. I hope one day, they have either it's a big reunion show or a one-off. I mean, again, I know there's a fan base there. I know there's a rabid, active fan base that would love for it to see a return. So if there's anything that I know about it, that there's a possibility one day for it to come back, even in a one-off environment. But, I think that's also just a hard part about independent wrestling, especially now. It takes a lot of work and time, and sometimes the state environment, as far as the regulations, aren't always conducive for it to be sustainable.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to ask you, you basically said that your independent wrestling scenes basically treats you like you're at home and all that. So I kind of want to ask you, do you have like a strong fan base where you are? Has any fan ever come up to you and said, any nice things about you or something like that? Like, what do you have a fan base?
Yeah, I would say I do. It definitely is a fun one. I remember one of my very first fun signs that I saw some fans have in New Mexico was, I mentioned Adam Merrick, who was the commissioner and also one of the other ring announcers for Destiny Wrestling. And some fans had put a sign together that had Miranda Morales greater than Adam Merrick. And it was the first sign I had ever seen for me, but it was also really kind of fun. And, everyone just took it very lightheartedly. But that was the first time I felt like I made it, when I actually had someone made a sign for me. So that was really fun. And in Arizona, the fans have been great. There's a really dedicated fan base of a group of fans that come to a variety of wrestling shows. And over the past few years, I've built a really great connection with them. and it's been, an honor with Larry and Dustin and Andre. They're kind of, the main three, but there's also an immense amount of other fans that they are just dedicated to their Arizona wrestlers and personalities, period. So they come to shows a lot, and they'll yell and scream, and they'll cheer for me, which is great. And then here in Tucson, there's a lovely fan by the name of Joyce who specializes in making very glittery artistic signs. And I've posted her a few times on my social media. She always makes this glittery sign for me that says Miranda, sassy and classy. And I love it because it is just it's such a pretty decorated sign. She spends a lot of time on making signs for a lot of the wrestlers and personalities and talent. And so the fact that she would even spend a minute making a sign for me is always great. So yeah, there's some really great fans, and they all show their fandom in different ways, whether it's making signs or yelling and screaming or just saying that you're great. It's a really awesome feeling to feel connected to, the people who come to the shows, because they do take the time and energy and money to spend it with you and to spend it with the wrestlers. And so anytime they have, they say something nice to me, it means a lot, because they didn't have to do that. They didn't have to come, but they did because they wanted to.
Well, it's great that you have a fan base like that that's willing to do things like make signs for you and say all kinds of nice things about you. That is really amazing, because you just never know exactly, who you're touching when you're doing stuff like that. So that's great. Yeah. So I want to switch gears and sort of ask you if your career has been affected at all by the worldwide pandemic.
Yes, it has. And I talked a bit about the evolution of my career earlier, and that definitely has been evolving due to the pandemic, and some good and some bad. This year, I was really trying to get more into, I guess, the reporting and somewhat journalistic aspect of wrestling. That was something I was really interested in because back in January, I went to Dallas for Impact Wrestling's Hard to Kill as part of the media group that was invited to be there for the chairshot.com. And I got to meet people from all other different wrestling news websites. And that part really interested me as a podcaster, that I wanted to kind of delve more into that side. And I had plans to go and see ROH and try and do media there, and hopefully continue stuff with Impact on the media side. But then the pandemic hit, and nobody was running wrestling shows anymore, and no one's doing kind of media, or at least in-person media calls or media events. And so that really kind of threw that off scale, because that was a huge goal that I really wanted to pursue that I just wasn't able to anymore. But it did grow some opportunities in podcasting. While I was in Dallas, I met Najir Chambers from Big Gold Belt Media, and we really hit it off. And he asked, hey, do you want to join me in doing my Impact Wrestling review every week? And I said, sure. And ever since then, we've been churning those out every Tuesday. And that's, wrestling as a community is great. And it's not just as wrestlers or as fans, but through other roles in wrestling, you can meet and connect with amazing people. And then Lucha Central came over the summer, where they were looking for someone to help co-host the Lucha Central weekly podcast in English. And so my name came into the fold, and I got involved in Lucha Central. So that's how now I have so many podcasts in 1 week, but they're all really great websites. I love them. I respect them. And they're all fairly different too, which is what was important to me. I didn't want to do anything very repetitive throughout my week, and I certainly don't feel like I did. So in opportunities related to some original goals that I had changed and went away. But in others, with the pandemic, it has allowed me to explore more podcasting opportunities and partnership opportunities with different websites. And I've gotten to do way more with podcasting than I ever imagined. So it's definitely been a bit of a blessing in disguise, but, I'm just rolling along with it, because you never know what's going to happen. And so I just try to appreciate every episode and every day as, a learning opportunity and just a way to continue to express my love and fandom of wrestling.
Yeah, if it's anything that this year has taught me, I know personally, and it feels like a lot of people universally, is basically how to adapt to adverse circumstances. Because it's just, you just never know exactly what could change, or anything that could just, blow up your world in a blink of an eye. So it's sort of like we've sort of learned how to become more flexible with what is thrown at us now. And I think that's a good way to be, because otherwise, if you just think everything's going to stay the same, then life has a way of, throwing you a curveball and saying you ha and telling you ha, it's not going to stay the same.
Yes.
So, but it's a good lesson to learn. So I completely, get that. And it's good to know that you've been able to adapt to the circumstances that everyone's sort of facing right now. So as a backstage interviewer, do you pre-plan what questions you ask the superstars, or do you go off the cuff?
I would say I do a little bit of both. It depends on how.
Hey, Miranda.
Yes.
Hey. Okay.
Sorry about that.
Oh no, it's okay. You were saying that you were saying that it's a little bit of both when you talk to the stars.
Yeah. So a lot of it will just depends on the promotion itself, how they want it to be set up. Some will already kind of have some outlines as to what what they want out of the interview. But sometimes there's definitely wrestlers who have kind of a mind of their own and have a vision as to what they want to do with the interview. So I really try and go with the flow. I kind of think of it a bit as backwards. So what is the ultimate goal of the interview? Is it to promote a match? Is it to help fuel a rivalry? Is it just to kind of showcase maybe someone new to the promotion? What is the end goal? And then I think, okay, what kinds of questions can I ask to help get there? But sometimes too, and I do this, and some of it I think is just me being weird, but sometimes when I go through multiple takes, I'll ask the same question, but I'll kind of tweak it every time. I'll ask it slightly differently. And I think one is just to kind of give an original flair to it, so that way it doesn't feel too rehearsed. And sometimes I'm also just playing around with my words, trying to get a sense of, do I like this wording better than what I said previously? I think I'm always tweaking things, even if it's in, right in the middle of an interview. So it's been a little bit of both. I think some of the better ones have been the ones that you just kind of go in cold and you kind of see what happens. A lot of that you just have to be flexible and you just kind of have to, see where it takes you. I remember doing one recently with a tag team, J Vidal and Parada. And I remember it was the third take, and it was one where we kept kind of going back and forth, and the first few takes weren't quite what we wanted, but the third take that we just kind of did things a little differently and unexpectedly, that we nailed it. And those are kind of the moments where you feel like, okay, you really do have it in you, especially when you're just trying to find a good rhythm or a good sound clip or sound bite, really, that at the end of the day, would go great on TV or on social media. So I think it's always good to plan in mind the end game. What are you trying to get out of it? But sometimes how you get there could be totally random or different every time, and you just kind of go with the flow.
Okay, because it's like, I know whenever I'm watching wrestling and I see the interviewers, backstage, or whenever the commentators do the interviews for a wrestler who, say, for instance, is like on via satellite, I just wonder, do they just, know what exactly they're going to ask them, all the way through, or do they just, go off of, the knowledge that's just in their head and then they just ask? So yeah, it's really cool to know that it's a little bit of both, though.
I think for the most part it is. I think when you look at, say, a WWE, I would imagine it's probably a little bit more to a script.
Yeah.
Especially for, maybe some of the newer interviewers or broadcasters. And when you're doing it on TV compared to, say, if they are filming something special for the network or for social media, where I think that is a little bit less rehearsed or scripted. But I'm sure also in other promotions too, even your Impacts and your AEWs, there's, I think, an element of, okay, these are the bullet points, but they kind of let, whoever's on the mic kind of guide that. And you think too about the veterans, like, in AEW, you do have like Tony Schiavone. He's doing a lot of the interviews. He could, I'm sure, do it in his sleep. Where you still have some people, say, in NXT that are a little bit newer, that maybe. And maybe NXT is different now that I think about it, because it is NXT compared to Raw. But maybe Kayla Braxton's interviews are a little bit more scripted. Just because of, that's the format of WWE. But I'm sure in each interviewer, though, you throw in a little bit of your personality too. I think that is what is the end goal, is that you can still do an interview with structure, but be able to showcase your own personality and nuances as an interviewer, whether it's your tone, whether it's even your nonverbal cues, how you deliver a question, how you respond to a question, all those things, like those are little nuances that can really help in an interview that really aren't scripted. That as an interviewer, you decide that, you determine that, and sometimes can actually really play up and help an interview be that much more impactful.
Okay. So do you ever have a hard time keeping up with what's going on at every promotion that you cover?
Oh, yes. All the time. Every week. Yes. That's regardless. Because there's so much content. And again, because I do multiple podcasts and they all have different focuses, it is very challenging to keep up to date on everything that's going. And to be honest, I am not up to date on every single thing. I feel very fortunate that, one, I think it's almost you learn to live with what you know and what maybe you don't know. And knowing that as a fan, like, I think we all have, promotions that are kind of just more our go-to and more that we watch than others. And we're not necessarily the experts in it, but that, you at least know a little bit about what's going on. That's especially vital for the Lucha Central podcast. We are a trio and we kind of divide and conquer promotions as we report them. So that helps a lot, that when we plan our show and we actually do a review of shows, we know who's covering what. Even though we all try and watch as much as we can, when it comes to Wednesday nights, I'm actually leaning more towards watching NXT because I know I have to report on that the next day. So that's where I stick more with NXT. Not that I think or I don't like AEW, is I know that when, Thursday comes around and I have to record for Lucha Central, I'm responsible for NXT. So that's where my focus is on that night. Same thing with Impact. I use that as double duty for Big Gold Belt Media and Lucha Central. And even now people on different podcasts and in general have kind of helped associate me with Impact because they know that is a promotion I watch regularly and talk about regularly. So it's not a bad thing to not keep up with everything. And in some ways, it's not a bad thing to be known as a fan of one promotion or two promotions. It's so much content out there. And for me too, like, it's just hard to keep up with it. So I try to do my best, but I also try not to overwhelm myself with so much and leave, that to other people to know, hey, I have other co-hosts and other people who are really knowledgeable on ROH or MLW or WWE, and let them be the experts. Let them teach me. Because then that way I learn from my peers, but also I'm not literally watching wrestling 24/7 24 hours a day.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest challenges for me going forward now is the fact that over the past week, everyone was talking about the crossover, which I will ask you about in a little bit, with AEW and Impact tonight. Like, I actually, or, you know, by the time this podcast, this interview is up, it will be Tuesday. And it's just, I want to be able to be, you know, smart in all aspects of wrestling, and it's just sometimes I don't want to watch, you know, so much wrestling at a time to the point to where it just feels like it consumes my entire life.
Yes,
but they're making it
exactly.
hard. They're making it hard because they're making you want to watch everything that's going on, so you can always, you know, they'll make it interesting that way, and then you can always know what's happening because it's always so interesting. And for me, my show is sort of centered on WWE with a hint of AEW here and there. But at the same time, now, you know, it's just, I want to be able to cater to a lot of different fans at a time. So now I'm actually in a place where I can watch Impact and AEW now, and it's, you know, even more interesting along with the WWE aspect. But I struggle with only having one day in the week where I don't watch wrestling. So
right, it literally is, and that's, you know, and that's on a good week, you know, that's if you watch everything on time and there's no added specials and extras, because even on weekends, so like we just had War Games this coming Saturday, December 12th, I know for me is literally tri-split because we have Impact Wrestling will have a Final Destination, or not Final, no, it's not Final Destination. That's how you know you have all of your wrestling and terminology mixed up when I'm like, no, that's a movie title. I have to look it up. Anyways, but you have an Impact Wrestling event. You have Triple Mania from AAA that's happening, which is one of the biggest Lucha Libre events happening all year, and that's what I'm helping covering for Lucha Central. And then I have a wrestling show that I'm announcing for that night as well. So I'm literally trying to figure out how to juggle, how do I watch these stuff while also preparing and announcing for a show. And it's Final Resolution from Impact Wrestling is this Saturday. So yeah, it's moments like that too, where you have shows stacked on top of shows and special events and all these, you know, that makes it way hard to keep up with all of that. And I completely understand where you're coming from and where you're at with wanting to cater to a wide audience of fans. And I think it's always about finding what about those other promotions are unique and what makes you a fan of them, because so many people complain about WWE and what they do and don't do. And, you know, a lot of people do like AEW, but there's things about, you know, their product and delivery that aren't always super clean or, you know, have room for improvement. And so instead of complaining, I always advocate find something that you like in another promotion, because there are really, I mean, there's an unlimited amount of promotions. And now that everyone's kind of revving back up, at least to do online content, you can find wrestling every single day of the week now. There's something out there for everyone. And, you know, like, it just allows you to find some of the better things in wrestling that fit you as a wrestling fan. And that too, I think makes it a lot easier to talk about other promotions in wrestling news when you can find the good aspects about each promotion. And there may be things you don't like, but I think that there's things about each wrestling promotion out there that make them unique and actually make it interesting to watch.
Yeah. So with everything that you do, like, how do you find that work-life balance?
I don't. I'm not the greatest at work-life balance. And I mean that some of it is kind of blocking off time. For me, I try and dedicate only about 2 days a week to podcasting. And Tuesdays are pretty heavy podcasting day. But for me, kind of consolidating it all into one day allows me to use other days of the week to, you know, get other things done and have a little bit more more of that work-life balance. I also will leverage, weekends when I have them free to record, especially for special products and other days of the week. So I am learning how to spread some things out. And also I have learned how to say no. And I've learned that, for me, I get really committed to projects and to podcasts with people that I trust and people that I, believe in me and I believe in. So for me, it would be really easy to get kind of out of control with all this. If you said yes to everything, but it's something too where you have to learn how to choose your opportunities and choose your moments wisely, because at the end of the day, there's so much more to life than just this. And as much as I love doing it, it can also be a lot when you're doing multiple podcasts a week and you're watching hours of wrestling a week on top of, things for now picking up with announcing and interviewing for shows. So I think it's really about, looking at your opportunities and selecting them, and looking at your schedule and blocking out time, and really looking at things and seeing like, what is the right thing for me? And, visibility is important, and wanting to get out there and taking other opportunities is always a great way to get out there. But is it worth time that you could be spending doing something else, especially if it means, time away sometimes from wrestling or from TV or from, social media, which that too, I'm trying to learn how to do a little bit more of. I think it's so easy to be drawn to what's happening on social media, whether you're, looking at news or events or wrestlers or content and all of that. But sometimes it's important just to take a step back, even if it's for a few hours, so that way you don't get too overwhelmed or like you said about, too burnt out on having wrestling every day of the week.
Right. Well, what has been your favorite interview as a podcaster so far?
My favorite interview as a podcaster has to be one that we did earlier this year with LuchaCentral.com with Lindsay Dorado. That is one I never thought I would interview an active WWE wrestler, and we got the opportunity to interview him as part of a launch, his new T-shirt. It was a Lucha House Party T-shirt that was in collaboration with Urban Aztec, Jesse Hernandez, who is an amazing artist who specializes in graphic art that's very influenced by the Mayan, kind of Indian type of heritage and style, but also a little bit more in the urban art too. So the Urban Aztec, points. But he had a T-shirt that launched with Urban Aztec, which is, a good partner with Lucha Central. And so we got the opportunity to interview him, and he was just so nice and so easy to talk to, and someone that I see on TV all the time that I never thought I would interview. But I mean, he is someone who is incredibly talented as a wrestler, as a luchador, someone who's just so artistic in his design. I mean, he makes a lot of his own masks, but also someone who's just a good person. He's a former teacher, and so he spends a lot of time just understanding that he could be a role model to kids and families. And, he has a lot of fun with his Twitch channel, and there's just many cool things about his career and his life, and just being a good representation of Lucha Libre and WWE, which we don't always have. So for me, just to be able to express that to him and hear that from him as well was definitely one of the coolest things. And I did a quick intro for him. I usually do the intros of our guests, and he enjoyed it so much that, he was kind of just gleaming of how nice of an introduction I gave him. And it was like all of the good things in the world aligned in that moment to be like, wow, he said like, man, if I could hear that all the time. I was like, you want me to record it? You can have it as your ringtone. Like, I don't care, like whatever I need to do so that way you can hear it all the time, because it was just a big compliment that someone, again, who's actively wrestling for WWE and has for a long time, just kind of liked an introduction that I gave him was very like, even now I get flustered just thinking about it. It's like, oh my gosh, that actually happened.
That is so cool. Like, I actually love Lince Dorado. I've actually liked him ever since I saw him during the Cruiserweight tournament that they had, and then on 205 Live. Like, he is so cool, and I'm so glad you actually got to interview him. That's amazing.
I've admired his work for a long time. I mean, he's a fellow Puerto Rican, so I literally have an ongoing list in my mind of all the Puerto Ricans out there that I always want to shout out and give respect to. And he's, again, someone who just, I love Lucha House Party, and I know that it kind of at first was a little gimmicky and a little funny and maybe a little cheesy for some people, but it's almost like it's a weird comparison, but it's like the New Day for Latinos, you know?
Wow.
Like, I think for like very just in a sense of like, having a trio of people that are very uplifting. Well, not so much anymore because of, the draft and things like that. But back in the day, it just was this kind of, wonderful sense of luchadors coming together for a good time that were athletic. And I think those groups like the New Day and Lucha House Party transcend cultures and transcend age and so much. So, but I think especially for Latinos to have a lucha-centric group like that was always something very cool that especially like younger kids could gravitate to. So I've always had that analogy in my head, and it's not necessarily meant to, say that they aren't inclusive. I think both groups absolutely are, but it's just a little different tone for, I think, Latinos who watch WWE, and for me, it was always something fun and quirky about them that I've always respected and admired.
I really like the idea that you said that, because I've never heard anyone, actually I won't say compare, but actually mention the parallels between those two factions at all. Yeah. I've never heard anybody say that at all, but I think it's a really good parallel to make. And it's like you said, the example that they set for people of color like that, and then even when you think of the New Day and what they do for people of color in terms of the African and African American diaspora, it's just they're basically the same. They do the same thing. So I'm actually glad you mentioned that, because I've never thought of that before.
Well, I love how you mentioned, that was the word I was looking for, a parallel. I think there's a lot of parallels between those two groups that, made it so that people, I think, but you're absolutely right too. I think with cultural identity and ethnicity and nationality, it's always important to see that representation on TV. And I think that groups like Lucha House Party and the New Day really gave people the opportunity to see aspects of different cultures in just a really positive and uplifting way. And I think especially for kids, when you're watching, that's important. Mm-hmm. I know some people complain about WWE being too drawn or too much of a product for kids, but that's where a lot of this starts. Yeah. Many of us who have been growing up watched as kids, and I don't think there's anything wrong with having a product, especially characters or people geared towards kids, because that's also where you see money flows. It's the parents buying t-shirts and action figures and belts and all of these things for their kids. And so I think it's great when you have really positive, uplifting role models, because true, at the end of the day too, these are like superheroes to these kids. So to have, positive role models that they can look up to and it be wrestlers, like, why not? That's a beautiful thing.
It really is. Like, seriously, people kind of underestimate the power that it has over kids, but once you watch something like that from your childhood on, it sort of sticks with you. Like, depending on who you are, it definitely sticks with you, because it's just like how it stuck with me and how it stuck with you. Like, it just sticks, and then you'll never forget how it made you feel. So, all right. So let me ask you, where did the name Queen of Soft Style originate from, and what exactly does it mean? Because the first time I heard it, I thought it was, I think that's cool, but I'm not sure what exactly it means, and I have to ask you that now.
That's fair. That's a very fair assessment. I have some people who are like, "What in the world does that mean?" And it's really a very innocent origin story of the Queen of Soft Style. And again, I have to credit, my good friend Greg DeMarco. He's been one who's come up with a lot of nicknames for me. I've had some other nicknames that have popped up over the years that I love, because I love nicknames. They're funny. But the Queen of Soft Style actually came about when we would be recording the Greg DeMarco show, and it would be time to plug our t-shirts on prowrestlingtees.com/thechairshot. And there was a whole variety of t-shirts that people could order. And one of the special types of t-shirts you can order through them is Soft Style. And it's just a different quality of t-shirt that's a little bit softer. It's cotton, but it's a softer material, and it just is so comfortable to wear that I would always just think about like how nice a Soft Style t-shirt feels on you during the day or to sleep in or whatnot. And of course, kind of his smart aleck way, he realized, man, you're such a fan of Soft Style t-shirts. You are really the queen of Soft Style, kind of a wordplay too out of, strong style. Mm-hmm. From Japanese connotation. So that's where the Queen of Soft Style was born. It was just me plugging t-shirts, telling people to order Soft Style t-shirts because of how comfortable they are and how nice they are. And it just grew into this nickname moniker, Queen of Soft Style. And I think because too, it's so paralleled, so similar to King of Strong Style, that too I think made it funny. And overall, I feel like I'm a soft person, that I am someone who, even though I'm loud, I don't think I know for sure I'm not mean or abrasive. I'm much more casual and kind of kind, and so I kind of consider myself kind of a softie as my personality. So even when I get critical or critique things, I'm always trying to, give a silver lining, kind of like a compliment sandwich. I'll give something good, something bad, and then I end with something good because I'm so not critical in those types of areas. So I feel like too that's a play on me as a person. But really, at the end of the day, what the Queen of Soft Style is about letting people know about Soft Style t-shirts, about, treating yourself to a Soft Style t-shirt, and just the joys of, ordering t-shirts from different, pro wrestlers or pro wrestling promotions. And if you have the option to get it in Soft Style, do it, because it's very comfortable and relaxing.
That's a pretty sweet origin story. Like, that is a pretty sweet origin story, the fact that it even has to do with clothing. And it's so funny because I actually love t-shirts too. Like, it takes a lot for me to not, because even today when I was going out, like, I put on a t-shirt, but then I had to change because it was freezing outside this morning. So it just bugs me to even have to change out of t-shirts. Those are like my most, like, I feel like out of every piece of clothing I have more t-shirts than I have anything else. And it's
I get it. And now especially we live in a time where it's like comfort casual. Like, many people wear t-shirts all day, or when you go to the gym, or when you go to the store. And yeah, I totally understand. I have so many t-shirts, and I've worn them now over more this year than I ever have. So and now the list is growing, just now the t-shirt collection is growing. So it's one of those things. And as people in the wrestling community, whether you're a podcaster, announcer, or wrestler too, like, your personal t-shirt collection grows, and there's so many cool, fun designs that it's now way harder to like stop. I've ordered way more pro wrestling and wrestling related t-shirts this year than I've ever had.
Yeah, and I feel like, with as many podcasts that I listen to and with many people that I connect to and love, the t-shirt collection is only going to get worse. So let's move on. So if given the opportunity, would you work for a mainstream promotion like WWE, Impact, AEW, or the like?
The dream that's always the dream. That's always like the Mecca. That is the top of Mount Everest. That is the pinnacle, I think, of everyone's career to work with a major promotion. And that would absolutely be a dream. I guess oddly enough for me though, that's not the only dream. I guess for me, I look at it in such a wider scale that I think even more of a realistic, but even more of a funner dream. I would hope one day to be able to do this somewhere else, like in another country, to kind of take this and to do interviewing or announcing in a different part of the world. Whether that be with a mainstream promotion or not, because for me, especially someone who has these like cultural aspects of wrestling, it's always fascinating to me how different wrestling is in different countries and different cultures. And that, I think, connects with me a little bit stronger as someone who's in wrestling, both as a podcaster and as an announcer and interviewer. That would be kind of the dream. But I mean, absolutely, to ever have the opportunity to work with any of those promotions, even you see MLW and Ring of Honor, seeing how they all utilize interviewers and announcers in different capacities is amazing. And to even that was something that I did would be really, like you talked about, full circle, literally, being a part of something that I watched as a little kid, and being on TV, to now this new generation who will take, all of our places in wrestling fandom. I mean, that would be really the circle of wrestling life.
Yes. I love how you ended it with the circle of wrestling life. That's like my favorite.
Yes,
Disney movie
it feels that way. Yeah.
Oh my God, it's my favorite Disney movie ever. I love The Lion King.
Oh yeah, and
but it's real.
No, it is. I mean, we talk about it right now about little kids. Like, these are going to be the kids that in 20 years are going to be showing their kids. We even see now a bigger surge of wrestlers whose parents were wrestlers. In that family lineage. Right. I mean, and we see people who, I think it's always interesting to see wrestlers as kids, and they post pictures of like, when they met a wrestler, like I always love seeing Bailey's pictures when she was younger, because, she used to go to all the shows. So like with Matt Hardy and John Cena, I think it was Matt Ryder had a great picture with Scott Hall. Like, literally, you take a picture with someone and you don't know who they're going to be in 15, 20 years, but they could be in that same ring, or they could be announcing, they could be interviewing, they could be a ref, they could be a producer. Like, it's what they see now that has that influence. And so that's always a fascinating aspect of wrestling to me, especially now, seeing that more, and just being, a fan for as long as I have, seeing how much things have changed, and now what fandom looks like compared to what it was back in the 90s. So it's going to continue to be a circle. And I think if we treat it with that kind of respect too, that's what helps with the longevity. There can be so much negativity as a wrestling fan that makes it challenging to interact with people online, because everyone has a difference of opinions, everyone has different interests, everyone views wrestling a little differently, and that's totally okay. But when it becomes toxic and super negative and almost insulting, it's like, what are we, why are we fighting? Why are we doing this? We are part of a community that only we understand, because non-wrestling fans look at this and say, what's the big deal? It's fake. And so, instead of coming together and supporting each other as fans, like, sometimes I think it's so divisive, because we're much more focused on being right, instead of understanding different people's perspectives. So, I think that's important as we have this whole circle of wrestling life. Like, we also teach these kids and these younger wrestling fans, it's okay to like who you like. It's okay to not like who you don't like. It's okay if one person likes WWE and another person likes AEW and another person likes MLW and another person, likes something else. That's totally okay, because they're all parts of the same wrestling world. They're just, different aspects of it. So, but we got to teach encourage younger fans to do that instead of teaching them how to, hate.
Right. I agree with 100% of everything that you just said.
Mm-hmm.
Amen. So I want to ask you, bouncing off of that question, who are some of your favorite wrestlers, past or present, and male, female, non-binary from any promotion?
Wow. Well, I would say that kind of the big marquee names for me as a kid was, Stone Cold, The Rock, Shawn Michaels, The Undertaker, DDP. Those were the people, Mick Foley, those were people as kids that I really look up to for all various different reasons, and mainly because of their personalities. There was something about their personalities that drew me to them. As a kid, also as an adult too, I also kind of like the darker side of wrestling and entertainment. I like horror movies. I like suspense and thrillers. So personalities like The Undertaker and even Sting I was drawn to them because I liked that as someone who liked entertainment. But then you have someone like Stone Cold who was just so real and visceral and just did whatever he wanted to do and was entertaining as anybody. And he definitely drew me to watch every week. But then you have someone like Mick Foley, he was just a little bit more comical and more of an underdog and someone that nobody expected to get to his pinnacle. And I've just always loved underdog stories as well. I think they fascinated me because you see someone grow and change as they go through these trials and tribulations. And I think some of the best ways that those have been shown is through wrestling, because you have a physical aspect to the storytelling that really you literally can see someone get beat down time and time and time again, but every time they get up, every time they get better and smarter and stronger. And I just feel like that was Mick Foley's story forever, and that just gravitated me towards him as a fan. I think that too led me to be a big Bayley fan back when she was babyface. Her NXT story was one of my favorite stories of all time. Her rise to the championship and her match against Sasha at NXT Brooklyn was like probably one of my top 5 favorite matches, and I think it's because it encompassed storytelling and just a great match that I was so drawn to her as someone who's had to, I remember her promo saying, like, I'm tired of my friends and family coming to watch me and seeing me lose all the time. Like, that there was a shift in her character once she really started that full program with Sasha, that she wasn't playing around, and she realized, I need to beat Becky. I need to beat Charlotte. I mean, like, she knew what she had to do to get to that level to prepare herself for Sasha Banks. And so the storytelling, even up to that match and during that match, was one of my favorites, because I really got a sense for her. This felt like, this is my moment. I have to do this, or else everything that I've worked for will mean nothing. So I love those types of just deep, rich storytelling characters. Well, I also like just people who are flashy. Ty Valkyrie is one of my favorites that I've really grown to love over this year. In getting to learn and explore more about Lucha Libre and her work as a luchador and her story too. I mean, she just went on a whim to Mexico to train, not knowing anyone, and really made such a lasting impression with her dedication to the craft and the art of Lucha Libre. Became bilingual, like really embraced it as a culture and a country that was just so foreign to her. And I think it's completely defined her career in ways that it's very challenging outside of, one of the other fewer big names like that is Lita. But I think even then, we see a little bit more of that in Taya because of kind of more of her accomplishments in AAA, but also her style. I mean, she has this fun flair that makes her so entertaining to watch. And it's evolved a bit since, what she used to do in Lucha Underground, and even when she first started in Impact. Now I really see her as kind of a lighter, funnier personality, but still with an attitude, a little bit of, a mean girl, but still comical, and still someone who can kick ass. So she's been someone that I've really loved. I really enjoy watching both her old stuff and then what she does on a weekly basis on Impact.
Cool. So basically I feel like you basically just ran the gamut of how many of, like, you were all over the place with how many wrestlers you like. And
that's me. I'm all over the place.
I love it.
All over the place.
Like, I love it so very much. Okay, so what is your opinion on the current state of wrestling? Even with, WWE, and even in the indies, and even in Impact and AEW with their crossover, or basically where women's wrestling even is. Like, just what is your opinion on the state of wrestling, and where do you see it going since there's a new year on the horizon?
I think obviously it's an exciting time, and not just of the super recent developments of the past week, but I think in general this has been a very trying time for professional wrestling. On the larger scale, with WWE, AEW, Impact, that have been pretty regular in their airings and filming, and then you see kind of a second tier of promotions that took some time off and are coming back now, like MLW and Ring of Honor, and even the surge of something new like the United Wrestling Network's Primetime Live and their partnership with the NWA. I feel like wrestling promotions have had to kind of take a minute to strategize, what is this new norm for us? What does this look like for us? And I feel like it's allowed for a lot of creativity with matches. Cinematic matches has grown, and that's one of my favorite types of matches in general. So I feel like as a fan of cinematic matches, this has been a great year for that. But also creative and fan bases, whether that's, the concept of the Thunderdome to having empty arena matches and shows, and how that completely changes the dynamic of a wrestling show when you don't have an audience there or a limited audience. So I feel like this year has been a lot of pivoting and a lot of understanding, who are we as a wrestling promotion when we don't have fans, when we don't have the same ability to put on huge shows like WrestleManias and Survivor Series and SummerSlams, those marquee shows that thousands and thousands of people attended, now, is done in an empty arena, or now in this case, for WWE, the Thunderdome. But I think it's really required everyone to look really hard about what product are they putting together every week, and how is that translating. I do think that the state of women's wrestling continues to grow and be strong. I think NXT has the best women's division out there, period. As much as I think there's strong women's wrestling really all over the world. I feel like they produce such a great product every week, and that their roster is stacked and strong, and they really rely on their women to help even bookend episodes, whether they are the first match or the main event. They were really the pioneers too in having women main event shows and pay-per-views, and their prominence in storytelling and their prominence in the card. So NXT has been doing that for a long time, and it shows because they have, I think, the strongest women's division. But I think Impact too is kind of that best well-known secret in wrestling. Their women's division is fantastic, and they've signed a lot of independent talent this year that has only added, an immense amount of personality and wrestling to their roster, like Tasha Steelz, Kimberly, Deonna Purrazzo. I think that those are all women, especially on the independent scene, that have worked incredibly hard and have the talent to go anywhere. And they found a really good place in Impact Wrestling. And I think that show does a great job of displaying them on a weekly basis with great wrestling, and they don't have a deep roster to do it. So I've been very critical about AEW and the lack of their women's division and the depth and the storytelling. It's gotten a lot better over the past few months, but it's also because they had to bring someone outside of the AEW, like a Thunder Rosa, to make things interesting. So I think that too is kind of more of like, I get where you're going with this. It's great that there's a lot of partnership, but ultimately you got to think about what that means for your division and growing your own. And so that's just been something I've been very curious at. But I mean, I think the partnerships is great. I think as fans, we are so ready to divide up the lines. We talk about Wednesday Night Wars like, it's 1999, but in reality, I think there's so much in general in entertainment that's so crossover heavy that we do want to see more collaboration between promotions when it works and when it's ideal. But also we like to see when things break down, and it is promotion versus promotion, because that whole breakdown with WWF and WCW didn't really go as planned either. So everyone's kind of thinking, well, maybe they'll get it right this time. So there's so much, but I think it's a beautiful thing. It's a great time to be a wrestling fan. There is so much content, so many promotions out there, so much fantastic wrestling. Women's wrestling is just growing to be a better and better product every month. That as a fan, it makes me really proud to be in a time when women are getting the visibility, the respect, and the recognition on a main stage every week.
Okay. Now I have 2 more questions for you. The first one is, do you have any words of wisdom for women seeking to enter the world of wrestling as a storyteller?
I mean, I think it's always just kind of going with your gut. Your gut will kind of guide you to the right opportunities and kind of let you know when the wrong ones are coming up, or just, people to seek advice from and maybe people to stay away from. And I think that's a general life lesson, but in wrestling, I think it's, important to know that you can't do it alone. You have to have, the right group of people with you, whether as friends, as mentors, as trainers. Take your time and do your research and kind of, see, what kind of people do you want as your support system, as your team. But also, don't be afraid to ask for help and go with who you want to be. I think too, we do live in a time now where wrestling is more inclusive to different personalities, different styles, different cultures, different orientations, so much. And so I think a lot of times people were afraid to be themselves. And now it really does seem like the door is more open to be who you want to be. So think about, who do you want to be? And whether that's an extension of yourself or a completely different person. And it's okay to change your mind and play around with those things too. Nothing is set in stone. That's the beautiful thing of wrestling. If you've seen, the evolution of so many people, wrestlers, storytellers, they've had a whole evolution. So knowing that there's always growth, there's always going to be opportunities to change and evolve. So don't feel too stuck in one thing, and also don't feel too discouraged when you think that maybe things aren't going the way as you planned, because it's really an evolution. It really is a story. Things are going to evolve, and so will you.
That's great. That's really great advice. So what does the future hold for you, Miss Morales?
That's a good question. I don't know. And that's because, we've all come through this year with, not really knowing what we're going to have almost on a day-to-day basis. And so I kind of feel like that is still what I look at too for 2021. I am not sure what 2021 is going to hold. I hope I can continue to kind of find this balance between podcasting and announcing and interviewing. Right now, there's not a lot of promotions that are running in my area. A lot of them were kind of starting back up again in the fall, but because of the pandemic situation happening and with upticks in cases, a lot of them have kind of gone back down for a while. So outside of this weekend, I likely won't be announcing any shows for quite some time. But then that kind of leaves me more room for podcasting. I want to continue the partnerships I have with the websites that I work with and want to take those to the next level. What that looks like, I'm not entirely sure, but I want to continue to work with some of my great co-hosts and great teams. I want to continue to produce some fun content. I want to help fans feel like they have a place in wrestling, no matter what that looks like and no matter where their fandom lies. Hopefully, I'm doing something that resonates with them and just continuing to meet amazing people. That's one thing this year has taught me and has allowed me to do, is meet some amazing people, whether it's podcasters, wrestlers, fans, and it's made this year go by that much better because I found a lot of great people who are just amazing at what they do and that I learn from and I get to really admire and see, very much like you. So I am just so honored to have met you and to just get to see you do your thing every week. And I hope that I get to meet more people who are doing the same thing. And that way I can learn from them and also be there to support them whenever they need it.
Well, I can truly say it's been an honor to have you on my show, and it's been an honor to have you in my life, especially as I've been learning, everything with this new avenue, because it's just, I've always known wrestling, but I've never known the idea of telling stories before. And this was kind of just a risk, and I was just like, oh, I'm going to try it, and then boom. And I just didn't expect, for me to have gained, so much of a family from this as I've had this year. But it's like you said, it did make this year a whole lot better. I find that even though we've been separated, I find that wrestling has given me more of a connection than I think I otherwise would not have had if everything was normal. And I'm just really grateful that I have you and so many other people, in my circle who is supporting me throughout this entire avenue. So thank you so much for coming on the Hardy Wrestling Podcast. And if you would you please just put yourself over and, tell people where to follow you and tell people what you have going on, and just awesome stuff.
I'm not the best at putting myself over. That's the thing too. I've actually started shows where I forget to announce my name because I always just get into a mindset of like, I'm just there to help tell the story. I'm there to run the show, not to tell people who I am. So I'm not always the best at it. But myself, Miranda Morales, you can find me on social media. I'm on Instagram and Facebook at the #Miranda, hashtag spelled out. I do not have a Twitter. One of my other nicknames is the Twitterless Heroine because I'm just not on Twitter. But I do sometimes get on the Chair Shots Twitter account to do mini takeovers and will sometimes hijack that Twitter account. So you can follow at Chair Shot Media if you ever want to find me on Twitter. That would be where I'm at. And you can listen to some of the podcasts that I'm on at thechairshot.com. There I have my personal podcast, the #Miranda Show, that I'm hoping Stephanie will be a part of in very soon. So if you're a fan of Stephanie's show, make sure to listen to the #Miranda Show when her episode will drop in the future. The Greg DeMarco show is also on there. The Lucha Central Weekly podcast is a trio that I'm a part of that talks everything about Lucha Libre, both in Mexico and in the United States. That's at luchacentral.com. And then every Tuesday, I do an Impact review on Big Gold Belt Media, and we talk about the week's Impact Wrestling episode. So those are all the places that you can find me.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Miranda, for coming on the Hardy Wrestling Podcast. And I wish you nothing but success in whatever it is you do. And I can't wait to be on your show.
Yes, thank you so much, Stephanie. A big shout out to the Hardy Wrestling Podcast. This is an amazing podcast. I'm so glad everyone listens to this show. Keep on listening because Stephanie Hardy is an amazing podcaster and host. So I'm excited to see what 2021 brings for you because the world is yours, my darling.
Thank you so much. All right, so I want to send a special thank you shout out to Miranda Morales, my wrestling sister, for coming on my show. She is a great mentor and an amazing friend to have in this wrestling podcasting universe, and I'm just so glad to have her support and her love during this process. So, like I said earlier in the intro, this is part 1 of my new episode of the Hardy Wrestling Podcast. Part 2 with the regular weekly recaps will be up either tonight or more than likely tomorrow morning. So please listen to part 2 with the recaps of Raw, NXT, AEW, Impact for the very first time on the wrestling show, and a little bit of SmackDown thrown in there due to professional obligations. So thank you for joining the vibe. If you want to follow me, you can follow me on Instagram at Hardy Wrestling Podcast and on Twitter at Hardy Wrestle Pod. And just continue to support the show and listen to it everywhere you get your podcast. And until next time, or at least until part 2, bye y'all.